Thank you so much for hearing us out throughout the day so far. And it's me and probably one more presentation standing on the way between you and your lunches, we and our lunches, probably. So let me not take too much of time and just keep the ball rolling immediately. The topic of today's conversation for me is around the artificial intelligence and machine learning piece. How do we get the essence of these two areas into the crux of e-governance? That's the agenda for the discussion today. Some of the slides, you would find them interesting in terms of the use cases. Probably if there are any questions, I would be happy to take them after the presentation itself during our conversations. But just to get started, we are looking at a lot of areas in this space. But let me start with my introduction. There's a professional standing with the mentor, the guru, and the kind of work that we have seen so far in mathematics from the gentleman. What is it that brings me on the dais today is the area of my focus, which is analytics and artificial intelligence. I've been working into this space for a very long time now, working with SAS for past 2 years now. Love listening to music. But one of the key quotes that probably has been a point of conversation since morning is around the unlearn piece. And that is a very important element from a technology standpoint. We have been kind of listening to various presentations and talks, which talks about getting the newer areas into the system. But it is at the same time very important to unlearn the stuff that we need not focus on going forward. So that is an important element which one of the American writers, Alvin Toffler, wrote in 1981, which states as the illiterates of 21st century will not be those who cannot read or write, but those who cannot learn, unlearn, and relearn. Now, with that in mind, let me take you to the next slide, which talks about the relearn initiatives as well. Let's look at the e-governance piece from a different lens altogether. What is e-governance? E-governance is largely around the delivery of information, deployment of information and communications technology for the benefit of public services, for the benefit of the public through a public service delivery mechanism. Now, this could be essentially at all levels between government to government, government to citizen, or even government to business initiatives, which helps us more from a citizen engagement perspective. Now, all of this put together gives us a very consolidated idea about the e-governance piece and how we leverage technology to deploy all of that. But it doesn't stop there. E-governance has a very important element. And while I've seen that happening throughout my career, analytics plays a critical role in this definition. Now, if I kind of built in the concept of analytics into the e-governance, this is how the definition changes with regards to the information and communication technology includes analytics now, which is not essentially just for the citizen engagement, but also from public awareness and citizen-centric services delivery. We have been hearing about citizen-centric services since morning, and this is essentially the crux of it, which helps us to have the government for citizen instead of government to government or government to citizen. Now, that's the kind of differentiation which analytics brings on the table for all of us. And that essentially also is built on using the concept of contextualizing all of the data that we have today. A lot of data has been generated for the past 2 and 3 decades. Now, how do we leverage that data from a contextual standpoint is extremely important, and hence the use of analytics into the play. That is essentially leading us to a value chain of e-governance. Now, in e-governance, what does analytics bring to as a value is improving governance from a compliance standpoint. Now, that's we've kind of looked into various use cases, whether we are talking about identifying various kind of frauds, whether it's DBT or tax frauds, but essentially also reaching out from a compliance standpoint. understanding the citizen need. Now, that is the second important value proposition from analytics, where you can have a more involved citizen from a governance mechanism perspective. Okay, I don't have much time, so maybe I'll have to rush in a bit on some of the slides. Proactive citizen engagement on social welfare. Now, that is the third value proposition from a textual and contextual data analysis perspective, where you know that kind of data today that is being generated in the social media, most of it being the textual format, how do we leverage that in order to improve the citizen engagement framework? Optimizing state expenditure and debt, which essentially would lead to the fifth important element of improving the state revenues. Now, we've kind of looking at all of these areas being deployed in India. So I've got various use cases, and I'm confident to talk to you about each of the areas where SAS using the analytics has been kind of focusing, and not just SAS, many other analytics players, but then I'm happy to share that states and the central ministries have been leveraging a lot of these areas in order to improve the value chain of analytics by building all of these use cases into their e-governance model. From an analytical framework perspective for the state government, and this is just now carving out one of the examples so that I can have a more focused conversation, is around creating a framework utilizing the analytics piece, where we create a state at a glance portfolio. Very briefly, we understood also that many of the state governments are now trying to create transparency with the citizen in terms of providing them the kind of performance of various departments within the state government, for them to have a view and understanding how the state government is performing. So you have a view of that. You create a performance scorecard in terms of comparing various kind of departments amongst themselves. Now, of course, agriculture cannot be compared to, say, education. However, there are various parameters where the technology can help you in arriving at a value proposition to compare each of these areas at one frame as well. The technology view, the initiative view. So there are various schemes which each of the state and the departments keep on running. How do we bring that as an element of availability for the citizens, not just for them to get the benefit out of that initiative, but also have a view whether and what kind of initiatives are relevant for me, which I can utilize. That is an essential component. And leading it forward from a voice of citizen perspective. Now, all of this put together, once the transparency is in place, citizens are more informed. They know what kind of issues they are facing, and they have a place to reach out and create some kind of a mechanism from a grievance handling perspective. Now, that is a place where there could be listening boards. Those could be deployed to understand the various sentiments of the citizen, whether it's positive, negative, or which direction. And then leading it forward to have a more proactive citizen engagement perspective, where there could be, once the listening boards are deployed, there could be various campaigns that could be run. Now, when I talk about the listening boards, there could be various mechanisms of whether it's a portal or a WhatsApp or any other technology piece which could help the citizen to give their feedback in terms of their issues. But the proactive citizen engagement largely talks about the government reaching out to the citizens proactively before the event or an issue actually happens. And that is a beautiful place where all of these analytics and artificial intelligence and machine learning things could help you for any kind of a preventive mechanism from a governance perspective. Various examples that I could quote, but falling short of time and moving on to the next slide. This is kind of a listening board, and I could just keep it to with a thought that there could be various kind of engagement and listening board right from a place where you could not just have the engagement of the citizen by having them participating in the governance, but also reaching out through a central knowledge repository, which essentially could give the information back to your governance processes, thereby improving the process in itself, instead of just focusing on the day-to-day work and executing the process as they are defined. So that's a place where improving the process also becomes extremely important. Let's look at a kind of a an act. Now we have kind of seen analytics there, taking it to the next level of artificial intelligence. What does artificial intelligence, in theory, bring for us from a machine learning perspective as well? So there are definitions across each. However, the natural language processing, machine learning, natural language generation, and deep learning are the key elements from a artificial intelligence area. Whereas from a data mining perspective, there could be various elements in terms of the content categorization, probabilistic selection of sorts, and then demand anticipation, contextual engagement. Now, all of this put together, just to bring out the crux from these two slides, is to understand and enable the government in the decision making. Both of these areas essentially contribute and help the government to decide in terms of what are the challenges, what are the issues, and how well we can quickly improvise on all of these. Some of the use cases to be speaking, and maybe I'll stop at that, is to have a reduced illiteracy rate by leveraging the analytics and artificial intelligence into this space. And we are kind of working on all of these areas, not just in India, but globally as well, by reducing the mortality in terms of road accidents. Those could potentially happen by identifying what are the areas of analytical intervention, whether it's from the imagery, whether picking up from the images where somebody is driving while speaking on phone and things like those from the image processing mechanism. There could be, and this is one of the use cases happening as we speak in Rajasthan, where a smart city engagement helped to prevent water-related hazards by introducing and involving the smart water management in the leveraging the analytics space at a near real-time basis. So it's almost a microsecond that we are talking to get the data from the sensors and then leveraging that to identify what are the issues that are existing or those could potentially occur in the near future so that the government can avoid that. So it's a real-life use case happening in India as well. Identifying shift in crop growth and yield patterns by applying deep learning. Now, some of these areas and many more going beyond, I could not just put all of those use cases together in a short duration of 15 minutes, but all of these put together are the real examples where we are seeing success by leveraging the technology in the space of analytics and artificial intelligence for the e-governance piece. With that note in mind, probably I'll close my presentation, and thank you so much for listening in on the use cases.